Welcome back. Now, in our previous video, we had discussed a very basic introduction to the history of the Roman Republic. We broke it down into the three phases of early, medium, and late, and began to talk about the salient things that went on in those three phases. Before we get into the details of what went on historically in those three phases, we first have to spend a bit of time talking about the civics of the Roman world, and in particular the offices that existed on essentially two portions of the citizen body, the aristocratic patricians and the common plebeians. It turns out that in Rome there were actually two different tracks that existed in the Roman world, one on the patrician side and one on the plebeian side. I'm going to try to keep it as non-technical as possible in explaining what all this is. But the main thing that you need to get from this is that there was in fact a very divisive split between the patrician world and the plebeian world, the aristocrats and the commoners, as to the government and as to the interests that each party had and what they wanted to see in the representative government. So we're going to begin first with the patrician side, which was the part that came into existence gradually out of the kingship period into the republican period, and which had the offices that were originally supposed to be run by the senatorial class. Once we are finished with that, in our next video, we will start turning to the plebeian side of things to explain how they responded to this government that originally appeared to be tilted entirely in the patrician direction and away from the plebeian direction. And you should understand that for the most part in the Roman world, it's practically impossible to be able to satisfy the interests of both sides at once. And ironically, in the empire, it actually became easier than in the Republic in some ways. All right, let's begin now talking about the patrician government. First of all, the term in Latin for the ranking of offices that one could theoretically ascend up to the highest rank of consul has the term cursus honorum. Cursus is a course, and honor in Latin, which does mean honor, specifically refers to a political office. So this is the ranking of the political offices that one can run through. So the first major office that one can get into in political office is quaestor, Q-U-A-E-S-T-O-R. The quaestor is the treasurer in the Roman world and is responsible for the public finances. From there you go to aedile, who is responsible for city administration. That would mean infrastructure, roads, bridges, aqueducts, buildings, and other types of public works that affect the running of the city. Then from there you go to praetor, and praetor is the military branch of the government in charge of the training of the army, the special guard that in the empire would keep watch over the emperor and maybe do other things too, and the one generally in charge of campaigning and any kind of military activity that the Roman world would need to undertake. From praetor, you finally go up to consul. There are two consuls elected annually, and the consuls are responsible pretty much for everything going on with the city of Rome itself, and to a lesser extent outside of Rome proper. Now, once one was done with being a consul, one was automatically offered the opportunity of going into the Senate. So an ex officio consul could become a senator. Plus, also, the Senate itself could appoint people directly into the Senate out of the patrician body. Now, this is what happens if you are following the course of offices within Rome itself. However, it's also possible to go out into the provinces and take charge of territory out in the provincial portion of the Republic, later the Empire. If you go out in the provinces, the highest position that you could hold out there is governor. Now, a governor essentially is the equivalent of a consul and can also have leaders under him who would be the equivalent of a praetor. So one crucial thing that's going to matter a great deal in Roman civics, you must get your handle on this, is that there is such a thing as power or authority. The word for that is imperium. It is possible to hold imperium, or power of office, within the city of Rome itself. It's also possible to hold imperium out in the provinces. That means outside of Italy itself. However, it is not legal to take imperium from Rome out to the provinces or from the provinces back into Rome. There's a specific legal split between those two parts of the world. That means that if you are, for instance, a governor outside of a province, you are not going to be able, unless you relinquish all of your power, for instance, to go back to Rome to run for consul of Rome. So that means that if you want to transfer yourself from the Rome and the Italian province out into the provinces or the other way around, whatever army you have with you and whatever imperium or whatever status you have at that point, you have to relinquish. So this means that there is a specific division between the imperium that you can hold domestically in Rome and Italy and the imperium that you can hold abroad. This is going to matter big time for the last century of the Roman Republic and the settlement of the Republic into the empire that Augustus will carry out. We will obviously have to get more into that later. Okay, but for right now, I will run through once again what the cursus honorum is so that you understand it from the patrician side. So again, you have quaestor, the treasurer, then aedile, the city administrator, then praetor, the military commander, and then consul, the general leader of the city as a whole, two of those. You have the Senate, which is separate from these four offices. The Senate consists of those who have held those offices or have been appointed specifically into the Senate body. This is what goes on in Rome itself. Alternatively, at some point in one's career, instead of remaining in the city of Rome itself, one could transfer oneself out into the provinces and could receive the equivalent of praetor power, that's pro-praetor power, or higher up, the equivalent of consular power, that's proconsul, out in the provinces itself. Whereupon one could eventually ascribe exceed to the rank of governor. So this is how it works on the patrician side. In our next video, the companion one to this one, we will start to explain how this was unsatisfactory to the plebeians, not surprisingly, and how they ended up forming their own form of government, and how through a long, rather difficult process of negotiation, eventually the plebeians were able to break into these ranks. Okay, we'll see you immediately next video.